Hello, Michael here from Small Robot Studio with another Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be having a look at how to model and render this lovely glass of orange juice. So let's get into it. So we're just going to start with a new scene here. I'm going to delete the point light and the cube, and then we are going to add in a mesh circle. With that mesh circle, we're going to switch to editing mode, and we just want to hit 1 and go to vertices selection. Select all your vertices and go to face and then grid fill. And you get this grid. The orientation is not super important, but if you do want to line it up, you can. So it's lined up nicely on your Z and X axes, or it's different in this, it's X and Y. And that's fine. So now what we're going to do is we will go to edge mode, which is 2 on the keyboard, and we're going to select the outer edge of this circle. We're just going to extrude along normals, and we can just drag that up like so. And basically this poly loop here is going to be the width of our glass. So if you want it to be a thicker glass, you might want to make it bigger or smaller, it's up to you. So I'm just going to make it say like that, and that is fine. Next we're going to go to face selection, and we're going to make sure our extrude is set to extrude region. I'm going to select all those faces and hit extrude, and we're just going to go up a little bit, and this is going to be our bottom edge loop. And this is because we're going to be subdividing, we want to have these edge loops close to the bottoms and tops of our geometry. You'll understand that more if you're not sure what I'm talking about when we get a little bit further into it. So that is fine. Now we need to do the same thing, but we need to deselect all these internal faces. We just want these outside poly loops. So I'm just going to hold down Control and deselect those. I'm 100% certain there is a faster way of doing this, but because I'm coming from Maya, I'm a little bit out of practice with all the Blender hotkeys and stuff. So you'll see me using menus and things like that a little bit while I start to wrap my head around it again. So with all those deselected, we will just move this up to the height that you want your glass to be at. We can adjust this later, so don't worry. So that is pretty much the height that I want. So again, I'm going to give it a little bit of a gap and extrude it again, just clicking and dragging there. And that will give us what we want. However, I've missed an edge loop on the inside there, so I'm going to correct that now. We will go to edge select mode and select an internal edge, and then we're going to click this button here, which is loop cut, and it's just going to place a loop in the center between the top vert and the middle and the bottom vert. So we can just once that's created by clicking, you can just hit W and go to the move tool and just slide that down until you get to roughly there, sort of that same sort of gap again. So that is our cup all completed. Very simple, doesn't look very exciting yet because we want to add subdivision, so this smooths nicely. So we'll hit 4 and we'll go back to our regular viewport, and we will select the tool button here, which is the modifier, and we are going to select subdivide surface. So what this does is it just increases the poly count of this mesh, and then it gives it a nice smoothing. So if you want to see what it looks like in the render, you could probably put it up to something like 3 in the viewport, and in the render, say we'll just go to 6, so it's nice and smooth. So as you can see, nice smooth round cup. So now we just need to do essentially the same thing, but this time it's going to be the liquid, so I'm just going to hide that for the moment. So we're going to do another add mesh and circle. We'll go to edit mode again on vertices, select all the vertices, go to face and grid fill. And again, if you want to line that up with the world axes, you can. It actually doesn't make a single difference unless you're a little bit pedantic like me. So the next thing we want to do is, again, we want to extrude this outer edge outward. So we're going to go hit 2. So we go to the edge select, and we can select all these edges like so. And then we can extrude along normals. So just click and hold on this button here, extrude along normals. And then we're going to extrude this out, but we're going to do it slightly differently because we don't have to create this internal surface. We're going to create some extra edge loops. So we're going to create a little bit of viscosity with this. So I'm going to do 2 edge loops outward along the normal. So that's the first one, and then we'll do another one, sort of maybe roughly the same distance is fine. And then we can go to face select mode with the 3 key and select all of our faces, and then we're going to extrude region, and we'll just slide that up, and we'll re-enable our first circle, which is going to be our cup. I'll rename that in a second. And we'll go to wireframe mode there. And then we can just hit W to switch to our transform tool. And we can just decide what level we want our liquid to be at. So once you've decided that, then we are going to go to edge select again, and we'll just select those outer edges. And this is going to be the viscosity of our liquid being simulated, because if you look at liquid, it sort of travels up toward the edge on a little bit of a ramp where it meets glass. So we're just going to move this outer one up a touch, and then we're going to select this inner one, which is a little bit hard to see, and we'll just move that up as well. Now if I hide that, again we will see that I've forgotten to do some edge loops, so I just need to create 2 here. So we're going to select an edge here, and we will click this button here and click on the edge, then go to our move tool with the W key, slide that up and click on the edge again and create another edge loop, and then again slide it down till it's sort of near the bottom there. That should do. So now we'll re-enable our glass, and what we're looking to do here to get an accurate render is have the liquid on the inside wall, sort of between this. So you've got 2 walls here. I'll just switch to this. We've got this wall here, and we've got this wall here of our glass, and we want our liquid to be in the middle of those 2. So if we switch to side view, we should be able to see that a bit easier. So if I hit 4 and go back to our regular perspective, and then we can just go to F1, and then we'll turn on our wireframe again, and we'll just check that we lined that up nicely. And if you didn't, and you need to make an adjustment, you can select your whole circle, and I can see I need to make an adjustment down the bottom here because it's actually parallel or intersecting the bottom of the glass. So we actually want to move that up slightly. So now you can see it's between the bottom and the inner bottom of that glass. We'll actually add the subdivision modifier here as well. So I want to get a little bit closer with this edge here, closer to the inside. So I'm just going to bring that in a bit. And if you want to go slightly more fine, you can actually middle mouse click and drag further from the gizmo, and that'll give you a bit finer control. All right, I believe that is fine. So we can see, it might be hard to see in the video, but we can see a little bit of that lip there, but it's still intersecting the glass, which is what we want. Now this might seem unusual, but this will give you a better result for your refraction. This is the way that you set up refraction with liquid in glass when you do rendering. So if you're happy with where you are, you might want to do a save. In case the software crashes. It's always good practice. So now we're just going to add in a plane, and we'll increase the scale there just so we've got a little bit of a floor happening. And we will also add in a light, and I'm just going to use an area light. And this is going to act as our key light, which means that this is going to produce the majority of the light in the scene, whereas a fill light would just be to contribute to the color and the value of the shadows. And our camera's there. That doesn't really matter for the moment. So now we just need to do some material editing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the bottom corner here and drag this up. And then I'm also going to grab the corner here and drag it across. So this bottom viewport, I'm going to switch to be our shader editor, which will be blank at the moment because we don't have any shaders. And this one here, I'm going to select this and hit F4, and then I'm just going to click this little arrow here and go to view, and I'm going to click the local camera button and then lock the camera to the camera view. So now when we move around, you'll see that our camera moves with this viewport, and we'll just line it up so it's sort of perpendicular to where the light's pointing at the moment. So this right hand view here will just be so we can navigate around without affecting our render. So we need to set up our render very quickly, which we're just going to switch to cycles. I'm going to use GPU compute. If you don't have a GPU that's supported, then you may not be able to do so. Otherwise, you'll just have to use CPU. GPU will make it a bit quicker. I'm going to also allow it to denoise using the optics denoiser because I'm using an NVIDIA card. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is add a glass shader to our glass. So we're going to go select it, and we're going to go to our material button, click new, and we'll just change this material to be called glass. And we'll just get rid of that Principled BSDF, and we'll just put in a glass BSDF because it makes it really simple. Assign that to surface. And now if we click the render button, you'll see that we get a glass that is transparent, and we've got this grey liquid in it at the moment, which we will fix shortly. The light could do to be a little bit brighter, so why don't we change it to something like 500 watts, which will do for the moment. And if we zoom in here, we can check our refraction. See that everything appears to be lined up nicely. So we've got this edge. When you look at it from the side, it should look like the water or liquid is touching the outside edge, even though in reality it's not. And you can see this viscosity as well is occurring because of the ramp that we created, so that's good. Now at the moment it kind of looks like milk, sort of, though it doesn't have any subsurface scattering, which milk would actually have. So we're going to add a shader to it. We're not going to make it milk though, we're going to make it orange juice. So by selecting our circle 001, which we're going to now rename to juice, and the circle we're going to change to glass_geo, and just for good practice I will also call the juice _geo. Plane will be called floor, and this area light we will name to be called light_key. So every time I add a light in, I'll call it light_something, and that way all the lights will be grouped together in the scene collection. Now I'm going to make one more adjustment to our glass because it doesn't have the correct index of refraction, or IOR. The index of refraction is just the angle that the light will travel at once it's intersected and traveled out the other side of your glass. All that is to say, you can look up the IOR from most materials online, anywhere from glass to amber to water. Glass from memory I think is 1.33. Okay, so now we will add our material to our juice. Selecting the juice geo, we're going to click new, and we will type in juice_matte, and we have a Principled BSDF, which we're going to use as our shader for it. So the first thing we're going to do is change the color to orange. Pretty straightforward. Select an orange that you like. This isn't very scientific. You can use the values that I'm using here if you want to use the exact same type. If you look at photos of orange juice, you'll actually find that it's a little bit more yellow than it is orange. You'll find that it's more orange in its subsurface scattered areas where the light becomes slightly trapped inside the juice before being reflected back outward at the eye or camera. So that's probably what we're going to do there. The next thing we're going to do is add subsurface scattering. We're going to give it a value of 1.0, so there's a lot of subsurface scattering, and now you'll see it is a whitish color because the subsurface scattering color is white. So we're going to change that back to be orange again, and we just need to figure out how much of it we want to have. So for juice, or this with this size geo, I'm going to use a radius of 1.0 and then 1.0 and then 0.75, and that will just give us a little bit less subsurface scattering, and you won't get that highlight that you were seeing, that saturated highlight that you were seeing on the back side, which is the side opposite to our light. Next, we just need to add some specularity to our juice liquid and reduce the roughness. I'm going to use a roughness of 0.1, and the index of refraction of juice I'm assuming is the same as water, so I think that's probably 1.33 as well. So we've got our juice. It's not looking particularly exciting at the moment, but it's not terrible. The subsurface scattering is giving us the effect that we want, and we could actually get a better idea of how well this is working by just quickly adding in a straw for our juice. So what we'll do is we'll just create, we'll just use a cylinder this time, and we'll scale this in like so, and then just get it scaled to the right width, and then we will set that to wireframe and just check the length. So it needs to be a little bit longer, but that width is probably okay, and we'll rotate it and we'll put it on a nice angle. One thing I've forgotten here though is that it has got a face on the top and the bottom, so I'm just going to hit 3, select the face, delete that face, and then do the same at the bottom. Won't be able to see it though, so we'll go to wireframe, select that face, delete that face. Hit 4, go back to object mode. We'll go back to meshed as well. Add a new material to this, and we will make this pretty straightforward though. We will give it a little bit of transmission, which means the light will just travel through it slightly. Best way to see this will be from the opposite side of our light source. So you can see the lights traveling through there a little bit. We will reduce the roughness so it's a little bit specular, and we'll just change the color to whatever color you like. Why not a lovely teal. Kind of looks tropical. Pretend that's made of paper because plastic straws are obviously terrible. Now at the moment you'll see that we can't see our straw through this because there is no translucency to our liquid. And we want to be able to see the straw in there. We want the juice to be fairly thick, like it's a bit pulpy, but we want to be able to actually see the sort of shadow of the liquid of the straw in there. And that's pretty easy to do. So what we want to do here is select our juice again, and we just want to increase the transmission so you can see that it starts to become clear. And I'm thinking somewhere around 0.35 will be enough, maybe even 0.3, and this will be dependent on the angle and intensity of your lights. Overall, if you're just setting up a single shot, pretending that, say for example, this was a product render. Alright, we're not doing too badly. Not super realistic at the moment though. We can make some more adjustments to this to make it look a little bit better. Back that transmission off a little bit more because I think I want my juice to look a bit thicker than that. Just a hint of that straw in there is all I'm really looking for. So we could actually add a little bit of variety to the tone of this juice very easily, but we're going to need to use a ramp to do so. So to do that, we're going to need UVs on this juice geo. So we'll select that and we'll go over to the UV editor and we will just switch to wireframe mode. So all verts are selected. Then we'll just go to UV and we will go to cylinder projection, and that has done a terrible job of unwrapping it. Okay, cylinder projection has given us a kind of crappy result, but that may be me doing something slightly wrong, but we can actually fix it fairly easily. So we'll just select these verts that are either the top or the bottom. I'm unsure at this moment, and we're just going to scale them in along the y-axis, and then the same thing here. Now this is not, by my own admission, the best way of doing this, but I don't know why that didn't unwrap correctly. Like I said, I probably did something slightly wrong. As I mentioned earlier, I'm used to working in Maya, but this will work for our purposes. So that is unwrapped. All we're really looking for here is the correct direction of this UV. So we should have UVs going upward and downward. And why that's important is because when we go back to our layout, we want to add in a ramp, color ramp. Just by hitting tab and typing in ramp. And we're going to make the ramp go from our yellow color, which we'll just select here. And we'll drag that along and add a new yellow color in, and that's gone to the wrong side, so we'll just change that again to be that yellow. And then this top color can be a peach color. So actually what we can do is just select that yellow and then go in here, and we're just going to reduce the saturation. So we also need to add in a gradient texture here for this to actually go along the correct direction, and also UV map to determine the vector. So now we can just apply this to, for the moment we'll just put it on the base color so we can check that it's working correctly. And at the moment, because it's almost the exact same color, it's going to be a little bit difficult to see. So why don't we just change this to a very obvious pink and turn our subsurface scattering off. Okay, and it just appears that our UVs are going in the wrong direction, which is very easily fixed. Select your UVs and just rotate them by 90 degrees. So there you go. So now we've got this color at the top here, which we actually want to be a desaturated yellow, and we just sort of want that near the top like that. Okay, so we just need to make sure that we re-enable our subsurface scattering, and then when we plug our color ramp into our base color and our subsurface scattering, we'll get some nice multiplication at the top there, and you can see that that value shift just gives it a little bit more haze to the top, which sort of gives it that vibe of having like it was just poured, and everything is sort of sinking to the bottom and you get the thinness at the top there. Now this looks okay, but the value looks a little bit too consistent to be something that has got like pulp in it, so we could actually use a noise to make this look a little bit better. We use a Voronoi here, and what we're going to do is we'll just plug this into the base color to begin with, and I'll turn that subsurface scattering off for the moment. And the Voronoi we will set to be smooth F1, and we will set it to Chebyshev, mainly because it's fun to say, but we also just want to reduce the scale of that. So we're getting this sort of cloudy effect. I'm going to turn the color off on it, so it's not going to be important as to the actual color here. We can actually scale that down a little bit more. Basically all I'm looking for here is just a variety of values and sort of some cloudiness. So to desaturate that, we could actually just put in a hue saturation node, plug the color into the color, and then the out color from the hue saturation into that base color for the moment. We just need to turn the saturation down to 0. There you go. Then now you may want to adjust the scale. I'm going to go with a scale of 3. Now we want to use a mix node, a mix RGB node, and we're going to plug the color into the lower color port, and then that out color can go into our base color. We're going to set this mix to multiply, and we're going to run the color from the color ramp into color 1. So now we'll get a multiplication on our primary color by this Voronoi texture. So that's just made a very slight difference, which may be difficult to see. You maybe want to increase or decrease the scale if you wish to see more of it, or you can change the factor. Looking at it from the side, 0.65 looks like a good value to me, maybe even slightly less, 0.55. Now you could also plug the out from this into your subsurface scattering color if you want to, but I'm going to leave them separate because I think it looks slightly better. And I'm just going to make sure that subsurface scattering is set back to 1.0 because I accidentally decreased it there. Okay, I've just scaled that gate out a little bit so we could get a better view there, and that looks pretty good. So now it's just a matter of deciding how much you want to have subsurface scattering. This will be dependent on your light source. If you want to see a little bit more of the subsurface scattering, it's good to place a light on the far side of your juice opposite the camera so it can shine some light through. But otherwise that looks pretty good. We'll look at a scene that I cooked up a little bit earlier so you can see what a finalized and refined shot looks like. Alright, so this is the one I prepared earlier. Obviously I've done a little bit more to it. I've added in a backdrop and some depth of field as well as a bunch of lights. This is all to complement the shader of our orange juice though, and you can see if I select the orange juice shader, I'm using the exact same layout and setup, but I've just also added in a nice half orange there as well, just to sort of make the overall shot look a bit cooler. So if you want to get a hold of this whole scene setup, it's available to patrons this month at the $5 tier. You get everything that's included here in the scene as well as all the assets. So thank you to our patrons for making these videos possible. That's it for this tutorial. If you found it useful, make sure you leave a like so other people can find it, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe as we're bringing out CG and illustration tutorials every week just like this one. Become a patron and access tutorial assets, bonus content, a private Discord and more by clicking the link below.